begin the adjudication test debate for Titech 2014. The motion for this round in this House was not punish high-ranking military officials who are publicly critical of the decisions of the elected politicians. Now I call upon Prime Minister to speak on the motion which stands in her name.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We believe that the military officers voicing out, publicly criticizing, is so important, and also they have a right to criticize. That is why we stand on the government side. So today I'm going to talk about two things. First of all, why even the military officials also have a right to criticize the official decisions of the elected politicians. And second of all, why after taking this proposal, these kind of the voicing out is so necessary for the better decision making, especially for the military affairs, and the better discourse and better decision making is actually made. But before that, let me define some models. So we think that the publicly criticizing means that both for the policy on the social welfare or so on, and also on the military affairs. For example, like the decisions on the budget for military, or how many soldiers they actually provide, or whether or not the invading they actually do the invading or not. Okay, and we think that after taking this proposal, not punishing means not punishing the criminal code. Yes.
Do you believe civil servants in general have a right to criticize what the government is doing?
Okay, so we think that the civil servant and the military officers are very, very different in terms of, because we think that the military officers, even though they belong to the national government, we think that these kind of people's, the nation's decision will actually change their life, or the result of the decision directly affecting their life, because they have a high possibility of dying because of the result of the decision. So we think that they are totally different. Okay, moving on to the first argument, why the military officers are justified to criticize. So we think that basically the government, everyone should have the right to criticize the government, because the government or also the politicians exist for the people's well-being, and if the decision is not good, they have a right to voice out to the public, and they have a right to publicly criticizing. So we think the freedom of expression is so fundamentally supported for everyone, and also we think why the military officers uniquely have a right. So we think that even though they belong to the national army, uniquely these kind of military officers, the government's decision, as I said, directly affect their interests. For example, because they one just a small decision can have a high possibility of they kill their lives, because military officers are sacrifice their life, and higher and higher than civil servants have a possibility to die because of the decision. And even though we think that these kind of people accept after accepting the result and enter the military, even though these kind of situations, they have a right to criticize. That is why we think that they are justified to criticize. Okay. Secondly, why practically this kind of the criticizing is so beneficial for the nation decision making as a whole. We think that under the current situation, because they are punished, they don't have a chance to voice out this kind of the criticizing. So we think that the general people in the country, for them, the only source of the decision making, or the only source of information, is through the media, or especially for the military affairs, that the government's control is actually existing. So even though the governments provide a decision like that we will invade these kind of countries, they cannot properly judge whether or not this is truly good or not, because there are only the insufficient source of information. There is no information from the perspective of the government. Even though the military officers think this is a bad thing, they cannot voice out. So we think that in judging whether or not this is a good or bad, there's only the one-sided view of provided for the government. So we think that the people can never know this is good or bad. However, after taking this proposal, what will happen? We think that there are the two kind of criticizing for the military affairs will actually exist from the military officers. First of all, like the military officers, yes.
Under the status quo, even under the status quo, there are politicians who are for the war and who are against the war. Isn't there enough dishonesty? understated school?
So we think that the understated school, even though these kind of decisions are they are both from the civilians' view, and we think that the more another view from perspective from the military officers are also important, because these kind of their voices never reach the general people. So. First of all, like the criticizing, like the stop the military action, and second of all, like criticizing to get more support for the military officer military. First of all, like the first case is like the military, the government actually decide to invade this kind of country, but the military officers actually criticize this kind of decision, like that it is so unrealistic that considering the money or these kind of people, the situation, it is so unrealistic that they should stop this kind of action, or this is provide no good result or that kind of thing. And second criticizing is like to criticize so that they can get more support for the military action, because like for example, like they increase more officers or increase the more number of troops or that kind of thing, so that they can do good for the invasion or that kind of thing. So we think that this kind of voicing out is so important, because the government have a structurally tendency to neglect these kind of people's opinion. First of all, because like these kind of civilians are not familiar with the military officers, the special affairs. So because of only the international relationship, only the information on the budget. So like because they are shortage of the budget, the civil servants have a tendency of cut the budget of the military, so that they don't consider how much money we actually need or that kind of thing. Or from the internal conflict between the party, if the military military defense part is so weak that they can get only small part of the budget, or only they can provide armed forces. So we think in these cases the military officers voicing out is so necessary, so that these kind of the voicing out will actually reach the public, and public will also think that these kind of people may be necessary even though they didn't notice beforehand. And this kind of discourse is actually change so that they change the government's decision making. And we think that this kind of thing is important, because without this kind of information, the true and more various information, they can actually cannot change the government. And we think that this is not so biased, because the public can actually judge properly. So that is why we think that this kind of criticizing is so important for the decision making. That's why we propose things here.
I thank the Prime Minister for her speech. Now I call upon Leader of Opposition.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Speaker. Please don't do a judge test with drinking Coca-Cola and eating potato chips. I know what you're doing in front of the computer, because that's what I'm always doing when I do a judge test. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, the military, Ministry of Defense, has an inherent motives to expand the military or demand a larger budget for the weaponries or military powers. If we consider this, state is the better actor, because the state has a capability to make a comprehensive judgment over the politics of the current situation. We don't believe the military have a right to criticize government, as they are the part of civil servants in exactly the same way as other civil servants are. To that extent, we are happy to oppose the motion before it has to. As a leader of opposition, I'm going to use three arguments. First of all, the nature of civil servants and extent of liability, extent of acceptability of what they are allowed to do. Second of all, I'm going to analyze the nature of military and defense of Ministry of Defense. Third of all, how this sort of a punishment is necessary to rectify structural power imbalance between military and politicians. Our model is very simple. When we say punish, that's going to be decided by martial courts or courts, and then the punishment will be proportionate to the kinds of criticism that high-ranking military officials make. For example, just like a case of McCarthy, if those high-ranking military officials just make some sort of a critical statement, then we're going to just fire them. If high-ranking military officials leak, let's say, classified information to the public, in that case, we are happy to imprison them. then the punishment will be proportionate to the kind of the critical criticism that these kinds of people make. Let's move on to the first argument. Before that, 3 rebuttals. I'm going to rebut to the previous speaker from 3 perspectives. One, what's the difference between other civil servants and militaries, high-ranking military officials? The answer from that side of the house, to my point of information, is how much the result of a decision affect the public can be a criteria or standard to differentiate civil servants. If that's the case, then all ministries have strong impact over the public, whether it's education, or whether it's finance, or whether it's Ministry of Law, Mr. Speaker. We don't know why the Ministry of Defense or the security is the overwhelming interest over any other different types of interests that exist in the public. Second rebuttal. My question is, are high-ranking military officials capable of making rational critique in the first place? Because that's the premise of her case. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, militaries or military officials make decisions, preoccupied with their own interests. We don't believe they have a capability to look at things from different perspectives. But on the other hand, the government, as a political party, has a capability to comprehensively examine the multidimensional interests in the public sphere. Government is not only preoccupied with the military interests or security interests. They have motives to consider other types of interests too. To that extent, we believe government will be better actor rather than high-ranking military officials who have motives to consider their own interests. My third question: is the critical discourse in the status quo sufficient? And Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, her benefit is that critical discourse under their paradigm will be better off rather than status quo. But we don't believe that's an exclusive benefit on their side of the house. Even in the status quo, the opponent political parties have motives or incentive to criticize what the state is doing so far. Media outlets also have incentive to broadcast critical or sensational or provocative information against what the state or ruling political parties are doing in many countries. We don't believe that sort of discourse benefit is exclusive on their side of the house. Moving on to the first argument, nature of civil servants. What we say on this side of the house is that civil servants have no right to engage any sort of political movements as one they are hired by public. Their salary is paid by tax, and then they are supposed to make a proxy decision on the behalf of the public. It's same as an employee and employer sort of a relationship. We don't believe, to that extent, the civil servants have a right to say anything political. More than that, high-ranking officials need to represent public interest as all the other soldiers follow the order of the officials. To that extent, when the high-ranking officials say something, that naturally spread within the organization. To that extent, the higher-ranking people uniquely have moral or legal liability to represent public interest. Let's apply this principle to the military. That's my second argument. Let's analyze the nature of military. Militaries have a unique... sorry, I will take you now.
Okay, are those public officials sent to the battleground and their lives will be directly threatened?
Public officials are used to go to a battlefield in the past. Right? Like, we need to consider the career plan, Mr. Speaker. We don't believe that public officials suddenly become public officials. These people have experienced these things in the past, and that is directly reflected to the decision that they may make in the status quo. These military officials or military have natural incentive to expand the military power or demand a larger budget. Because when the situation is peaceful or amicable, they cannot make any visible performance, right? Like, their career plan is very short. Some people might have second life plan. After retirement, they might get a job as private military contractors. But anyway, they need to have some sort of visible achievement or visible records in order to get promoted in the organization. To that extent, they have clear incentive to continue or any fight end these sort of battles. To that extent, they have incentive to demand a larger budget for the military. More than that, the uniqueness of the higher-ranking people is very clear. If these people say something that will naturally spread to the other soldiers, we need to consider hierarchical relation within the organization, right? Whatever commanders say, the soldiers have to say yes sir or these kind of things, Therefore, these soldiers have no way to oppose what the higher-ranking people are ordering them. That's the nature. Mr. Speaker, when the General MacArthur tried to use atomic bomb in order to win the warfare in the Korea War, Truman ordered him not to use that. Then General MacArthur publicly opposed that. Then he was fired. What we say from this example is, the general or commanders are just considered one particular interest, that's to win the war, to efficiently prosecute the war. They have no incentives or capability to consider other types of interests comprehensively. To that extent, the state is much superior actor to make that sort of public decision. We don't believe, subjective judgments made by individual officials are anyway better for society. To that extent, we are happy to oppose the motion. Thank you.
I thank the Leader of Opposition for his speech. Now I call upon Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to talk about three issues integrating my rebuttal and substantive. Firstly, whether or not this deserves punishment, and secondly, whether or not this speech is necessary for the public discourse and military strategy, and thirdly, what's going to be the effect of this proposal on the public discourse. So let's go on to my first point, which is about whether or not this deserves punishment. Now that general claim coming from their first point is that the public servants should not be allowed to speak against the government because they should be representatives, they should be serving the public interest. But we also told you from the Prime Minister, which was not particularly responded to, that freedom of speech is extremely important, constitutionally guaranteed in the liberal states for every single citizen. And therefore, when we have these two conflicting necessities, we have to analyze the unique circumstance of the military. And we told you from the Prime Minister, we see a unique vulnerability in regards to their positions, and therefore they should be allowed to speak against the government. Now, to the extent that other public officials are not allowed to speak against the government, we say two things. Firstly, if the principle we are providing similarly applies for these cases, we are not necessarily averse to supporting the speech by the other officials, and therefore that's not going to win the debate. And second of all, Mr. Speaker, more importantly, we told you the reason why the military officials are unique, and the response coming from LO is that all servants are affected severely by the public decisions. But the extent, this is a matter of extent, Mr. Speaker. I gave you in the point of which you mentioned the fact that no public officials are directly sent to the battleground, and it is not true that their lives are directly threatened or at stake by the decision-making process of the government, and therefore that should be the crucial distinction we have to draw in today's debate. But adding to that, Mr. Speaker, so the analysis my partner provided in her second point comes into the picture of this principal issue as well, Mr. Speaker, because what my partner told you in her second point is that, Mr. Speaker, there's a high secrecy surrounding the public political decisions regarding the military affairs, Mr. Speaker. For example, when the U.S. invaded in Iraq, very few citizens doubted the accuracy or the correctness of information regarding the existence of weapons of mass destructions, Mr. Speaker. Furthermore, there are things like classified information which are held exclusively at the hands of the state. These facts show, Mr. Speaker, that we cannot have a check in the public eye for those military affairs and decision-making process in that issue, and therefore, given that this secrecy, given that there cannot be a proper counter discourse provided in the a public avenue, we think military themselves on their own should be allowed to speak against the public decisions if they are, for example, exposed, if they're exposed to the danger unnecessarily or in an improper manner, and that should be the reason why they should be allowed to speak to break this kind of vulnerability. So my second issue is about how in the status quo, there's insufficiency and how we need this kind of speech in terms of public discourse and decision-making process. Now, what we say is that what my partner already provided to you is that there's a special reason why, Mr. Speaker, we need the speech by the military officials on their own. Now, there are three reasons why. Firstly, Mr. Speaker, so I'm going to elaborate more. First of all, political decision is not always correct. The reason why General Macristo criticized Obama is because there were insufficient scale and number of troops on the ground, Mr. Speaker, and therefore, like sometimes there cannot be enough troops, as my partner already told you, to fight against terrorism on the ground, and that should be the reason why political decisions should be rectified in some circumstances. Now, secondly, Mr. Speaker, military spending is cut down in many of the states, especially in Europe and US, and most of the countries, Mr. Speaker, because there has been austerity measures, and there's public pressure in this context of the financial crisis to cut down the spending, including the military spending, as a matter of fact, and therefore there might not be sufficient number of troops, Mr. Speaker, or weaponry to fight against the terrorism again in this specific context of public pressure. And thirdly and lastly, we see that there is internal conflict against between the public ministries. Now, LO talks about how military have the motivation to expand their skill by increasing the number of budget, but that logic applies for all the other ministries. For example, the ministry which are providing the public construction projects to increase employment and so on and so forth. All ministries have the same incentive. In that circumstance, it is not always the case that the defense ministry have strong enough power to convince, Mr. Speaker, the other ministers of political, the members of the Congress, that military budget should be increased in this specific moment. And therefore, for those three reasons, there is the reason why military themselves should be allowed to speak up, because there is, again, the vulnerability, not only for their lives, but also for in terms of proper decision-making process in terms of military affairs, and therefore, they should be allowed to speak against this kind of difficulty when necessary. And that should be the reason why, for the public discourse, they should be allowed to speak up. Now, the response coming from them is that, Mr. Speaker, there are political parties and media which are giving critical opinions, and that should be enough. But again, even though political parties and the media exist, Mr. Speaker, basically, the decision making are done by the executive official, for example, the president, in terms of the United States. And we told you all the reason why those executive and administrative branch are not always, Mr. Speaker, sufficient adequate actor to single-handedly make decisions, excluding the opinions of the military officials themselves. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, because they are the primary actor, but those primary actors are not always adequate decision maker, exclusively or single-handedly, we think criticism by the military themselves or on their own is necessary, and therefore that should be allowed. So my third issue is about my third issue, which is going to respond to the rest of the material, is about what's going to happen in the after plan. Because all of their harm rests on the idea that there will be public discourse will be swayed one-sidedly by the opinions of those military officials. For example, he talks about how the opinions naturally spread to the lower echelon of those military branches. But what I want to say is that for several reasons, there will be a more balanced discourse, not distorted ones, in the after plan. Now, first of all, presumably, even in ops case, they are going to allow the opinions which are supportive toward the government, and therefore, Mr. Speaker, there will obviously be a balanced discourse between those supportive opinions and the critical opinions, and we don't see how there will be sway, there will be a huge amount of sway by those critical opinions only. But second of all, the beauty of our proposal is that in the after plan, uniquely, there will be more leeway for those people who are supportive to the government to express their opinions, because there will be more attention, Mr. Speaker, drawn to the opinions as well when they reply back against those critical opinions provided by the hierarchy military officials such as General Mafristo. And therefore, obviously, there will be more avenue and attention which are given to them to reply back against those critical opinions which are produced in the after plan. And therefore, more in the after plan, there will be a balanced discourse, and that is going to be good. Now, he talked about the example like Truman and General MacArthur, but we are not talking about military specifically ordering their subordinates to conduct certain activities, right? Obviously, Mr. Speaker, speech is going to be reflected into the exact political decision first of all, and the political decision is the one which those military people have to support, have to abide by, and therefore, as long as political decision, Mr. Speaker, have to be made for them to act, Mr. Speaker, and we are not specifically talking about ordering, Mr. Speaker, to the subordinates. That's sort of how it is not going to materialize. For all those reasons, we are ever so proud to propose.
I thank the Deputy Prime Minister for his speech. Now I call upon Deputy Leader of Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, those like high-ranking officials often have a very myopic view of the world because they are engaging in the war. They are engaging in the war against terrorism. What they are seeing is only the enemies and the win in the future. Of course, those high-ranking officials do not want to be said by the public that they are like the losers or that they are losers of the wars. They are desperate for winning the wars, and only when they are having the war, especially the bad situation, those public high-ranking officials of the military criticize the government because the government did not allocate more militaries on the Iraq, Afghanistan, we cannot win the war against terrorism, or we cannot win the war in the South Korean Peninsula. Mr. Speaker, we have to realize that they are completely biased, have the biased view of the world, and their statements do not influence the execution of the military conductions. But before that, first refutation. What the government side has consistently said is that the reason why those like military high-ranking officials have the right to raise the voice is because their job is dangerous. Mr. Speaker, firstly, this is not true. Because politicians allocate in the Ministry of the Defense, because always politicians, because of the civilian controls, politicians are always hearing the voice of the militaries, and because those publics do not want their like citizens, I mean the soldiers, to die in the war fields, because they are always do not want the military to die again. Therefore, in the status quo, those United States shift the soldiers to the drones in the Iraq, Afghanistan's wars. They are completely decrease the death of the public official without having like raises the voice in the society. Secondly, what they say is that because of the high secrecy, their voices cannot reach to the public. Mr. Speaker, to begin with, those as far as because the information which can be opened towards society is already open in the status quo, and even after the disposal, the military officials do not reveal the classified information which is secret in their organizations. The information revealed in the society would not change, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, those the high accurate information, what they are talking about, will never occur. Therefore, even in the status quo, even though the fight against the terrorism, they are saying that the budget of the military expenditure is decreasing. Mr. Speaker, it's a very rational decision. They compare the cost which can be used for the military operations, because we are now do not have the low threat from the terrorist attacks, and because the government do not have enough money, of course, in the status quo, we are decreasing the money for the fight against terrorism. It's a very rational decision of the calculus of the citizens. Secondly, they mentioned about high-ranking military officials can make rational decision. Okay. Firstly, we constantly say that they have the very myopic view of the war. What they are seeing that they are desperate for winning the war. They are having more budgets in order to have high performance, or they have to need the visible performance when they are in the seats of the high-ranking military office. And what they say is it's fine. The government side said in the last result the citizens make the decision. No, Mr. Speaker, we have to realize that the military offense is a military organization. It's a system of the hierarchy. Mr. Speaker, when the high-ranking military officers say that because Barack Obama did not allocate the soldiers in the Iraq Afghanistan's war, we are now having we are losing our fellows are killed by the terrorists. If the high-ranking officials says the low-ranking soldiers say again that yes, the official what the boss is saying is the truth, and those complaints are widely spreading when it comes to the case of the McChrystal-McCarthy's cases in the Iraq-Afghanistan war, or MacArthur's case of the the Korean Peninsula's war. Those complaints, because those publicly criticism by their boss can directly influence towards the psychologies of the lower officials, because those lower officials are not allowed to oppose toward what the high-ranking officials said. Those complaints can make impossible for the military organizations to succeed to execute the military operations, and because of that, citizens' rational decisions cannot be fulfilled, and therefore Barack Obama couldn't retreat their militaries on the Iraq-Afghanistan's war, even though the citizens want Barack Obama to retreat the soldiers immediately. They cannot do that. Yes.
Okay, if you're a general, is saying that we need more troops to fight against the terrorism, well, do you think that is going to rather increase the morale and performance of their subordinates since they, while still fighting seriously in those on the ground?
The real problem is that what our side consistently told you, that how the journalists or those the politicians which deal with the military operations reveal the information, the citizens think that those retreat of the military soldiers should be done immediately because of those kind of statements of hierarchy officials. Those military organization would fall into the dysfunctioning, malfunctioning, and those decisions can be distorted. That, of course, Barack Obama have to allocate more soldiers, even though the citizens do not want him to do that. Therefore, Barack Obama fired the generals, and he succeed in retreat the military officials because he keeps the status quo. For those reasons, we beg to oppose.
I'd like the deputy leader of opposition for his speech now called upon government.
Mr. Speaker, three points that I want to make to summarize today's debate. Firstly, I'm going to analyze the principle about freedom of speech, and secondly, I'm going to talk about the discourse under their model, and thirdly, I'm going to analyze the discourse under our model. So, firstly, in terms of freedom of speech, we told you two things in terms of freedom of speech. Firstly, the military should have the right to decide their own fate, because war is about their life, whether they should fight to take the risk to fight the war, to take the risk of their life, and we think that this kind of thing should be decided by the military, and this is totally different with the case of public servant. And secondly, we told you that the military should have, the citizens should have the right to know about what kind of know the information and know what is the opinion of high-ranking officials, because they are the one who can understand better, who have the information. They are the one who know that how much weapons is needed. They are the one who actually know the how much troops we should send to the military. We should send to the war. And we think that this kind of things can never be achieved because in their model, because the politicians and like the media cannot have those kind of comprehensive information in order to fight those kind to fight those kind of war that is necessary. And we think that citizens have the right to decide that, because they are sending their family members to the war. They have the right to know how much weapons should be sent to them. And we think that this is the principle, and we stand for on today's debate. And the only response coming from their side house is about some kind of public servants. We think that this is completely different cases, because public servants don't actually, need to sacrifice their need to put their life into risk in order to if they don't have the counter opinion. And also we think that war is a very large thing that can affect a lot of people's life, and this kind of thing make the information become more and discourse more important than those kind of selfishness and selfish that they are supporting. And so the second issue I want to talk about, the discourse under their model, and the discourse under their model is unbalanced. They said that because we think that military can only under their model, military cannot say different opinion, and military cannot have can only support politicians in terms of decision about the war, and that is unbalanced. They told us that politicians who are under their status quo can be for or against the war, and the discourse is happening under the status quo. We think that this is unbalanced because under the status quo, only the military who support the war can have their opinion. We think that if Barack Obama is against the war and the opposing party is for the war, and the general can only support the military can only support those politicians and can only support Barack Obama, but not against that. We think that is why the discussion in the status quo is unbalanced. And secondly, we said that those kind of military's opinion is necessary because they have the unique information about how much weapon is necessary. They have the information of how much money should be given to the military, and those kind of unique information, which is not cannot be acquired by those kind of opposing party and so forth. And we think that this is very necessary, and we can have a better discourse after taking this plan. And lastly, I want to talk about the discourse under our model. Why is it better under our model? They told us that military only consider themselves, and their motive is biased. The military's motive is biased. We think that, firstly, it is okay for people to have biased opinion and have that kind of opinion to be discussed at the first place. We think that even if the military have biased motive, doesn't necessarily mean that their motive is going to become the thing that they want to do is going to be achieved. We just have those kind of issues to be discussed at the first place, and we think that under our model, counter discourse would happen. Would happen. For example, we think that after taking this plan, some military can have the opinion against the politician, but also some kind of other military officials can have the opinion for the politician. We think that military can. What we are supporting is that military can participate in that discourse. It doesn't necessarily mean that military will do anything they can, because we think that even in the military, there are various kind of opinions. Doesn't necessarily mean it's just only one-sided. And also we think that military should have the right to be selfish, because it is them that is taking the risk of losing their lives. They should have the right to consider about that. And also, they told us that military want to make visible achievement and so forth, and that's why they want a vast amount of military spending. And we think that they're achieved. First of all, we think that as I have already told you, that even if they want to have personal interest, it doesn't mean it is necessarily going to happen, because we only wanted them to have more discussion and more information to discussion. And that doesn't necessarily mean that their personal interest is not going to be criticized by other people and other media and so forth. And also we said that their achievement is actually fight good war and actually win the war and actually to protect the citizen, to fight the terrorists. Their achievement, their visible achievement, is actually connected to the interest of citizens. That is to say, we think it's actually a good thing.
I thank the government whip speaker, and I'll call upon opposition whip speaker.
Three things to talk about in my speech. In my first argument, I'll explain why military officers' right to voice out is not so important in this specific context. In my second argument, I'll explain whether the problem itself exists. For example, the lack of enough troop or something like that, but it really exists. I doubt this point. In my third argument, I'll explain why, after taking this proposal, there will be malfunction of military will occur, and also that distort the good decision of people itself. So, moving on to my first issue. Other sides say that everyone has right to voice out, and especially for those kind of military officers, they're in the war field and their lives are threatened. So in this specific context, we have to make much on those kind of rights. But we say that when those kind of threatening life problem, we say other actors like policemen or like firefighters are also threatening life, and so we say that this threatening life is not so unique to military officers. A second point, we say that even if those rights are important, there are two reasons why this right should not be prioritized. First reason is that those kind of military officers actually consent to the situation that you cannot voice out. Because when you become military officers, you sign a contract and actually compromise that to be in that situation. And second of all, as my partner already told you, they have unique duty to work as executive branch and work as what they are told by the government. And we told you that we told you many examples, and also that especially in those kind of military cases, if one high-ranking military officers say something negative about government, subordinates are really likely to believe. And other sides say that there are many military ranking officers and there's discussion between them. But first of all, we say even one high-ranking military officers say that will hugely affect subordinates because they're in extreme situations. And even one there is one high-ranking military officer say negative things. Behind him is about 40 or 50 subordinates. If those kind of subordinates listen to him, and that will decrease the motivation of that troop itself. So we say that there will be the malfunction is really likely to happen. And even if those kind of voicing out right is important, government should not prioritize those kind of rights because actually we told you that those kind of voicing out actually distort the rational calculus of its people, and rational calculus if the rational calculus will be distorted, that means that there will be like misjudging about like military things. For example, you will be much more attacked, and there will be more people will the lives of people will be threatened, and that kind of sense like. Government can limit the right of those kind of voicing out. So moving on to my second issue, we say there is no problem, but other side gives us two reasons why there are problems. First reason is that like there is no their government cannot get enough information, and there is sometimes problems about not having enough troops problem. But we totally know this point, and also that we don't hear any unique necessity why like high-ranking military officers have to say this kind of demand publicly, because military officers can say secretly, I need like this amount of troops to the government, and we say that those kind of high-ranking military officers don't have a necessity to like speak out to subordinates or publicly, and just saying like secret to government and they're giving report to the government showing data is enough. And second point, they say that those kind of military officers don't have capacity to like make other like military people to feel the necessity of those kind of problems. But we also totally doubt this point, because if like some like high-ranking military officers show data and we lack this kind of like amount of soldiers, so we need this, and we are in really bad situation. In that kind of sense, like other like military, other ministry people also feel the necessity, because if they lose the war, their social security and their lives also be threatened. And in that kind of sense, they have a strong incentive to listen to what military officers said. So we say that there is no problem under the status quo. But before moving on to my third issue, later, I'll talk about the characteristic of those kind of military officers. Government calculates those high-ranking military officers as like a good person for only thinking about the benefit of the whole nations. But we say that, but our side uniquely told you what kind of mindset actually military officers have. They like have strong incentive to achieve the visible achievement in the war, and like get and assure their like future planning as like employed by other like militaries like PMC or something like that. In that kind of sense, they have strong incentive to to like expand the like military soldiers. For example, the case about MacArthur, and he had strong incentive to like win the war and show their achievement. In that kind of sense, they said to the government that why don't we like drop a nuclear weapon to North Korea or other kind of things. So we say that they have strong. So we say that those kind of military officers cannot calculate the whole nation's benefit. So moving on to my third issue, we say that our side continuously told you that after taking this proposal, because subordinates also lose the incentive to allow what the government say, they lose the incentive, and that leads to the like malfunctioning of military. And why is it so problematic? Because it means that will lead to the losing war, and like many lives were killed and many rapes might be conducted. So we say that this is totally damaging, and also we say that this also distorts the rational calculus of people, because what like military high-ranking officers saying seems reliable. So many people just listen to and like listen to, and that means that there will be like not best decision will be taken after this proposal, and there will be like too much early like withdrawal might be conducted, and too much attack on other side might be conducted, and that leads to the like this losing reputation. So for all these reasons, we beg to oppose.
With speaker, now I call upon opposition reply speaker to end the opposition's case.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, firstly, I'm going to mention about the freedom of speech issues. Mr. Speaker, what the government side said is that because like the reason why those exceptionally those military hierarchical officials have the right to spread their voice in the public is because their job is dangerous. Mr. Speaker, firstly, their danger is mitigated because they can directly send their voice towards the government because the politicians are located in the military offices, because the citizens don't want them to die again, and because they have it is an informal choice for them to not to raise their voice in the public like other public servants. We think that they are not so different from the firefighters or police officers who also have dangers in their operation in their operations. But compared to that, our problem is that because of their distorted decision raised by their decisions, we have to fall into we have to give the severe burden for the citizens. Because like the Korea or Afghanistan or Vietnam War, because every time those hierarchy officials do not want to retreat the militaries from the battlefields, if they because they are not allowed the government to do that, our citizens to do that, so we have to the citizens have to bear the burden. Only one military soldiers is $1 million a year in the battlefields. Those even though the United States citizens say that we cannot bear the burdens for the military expenditure of the Iraq-Afghanistan's war, because those constantly those generals in the Afghanistan or Iraq war say that we have to need more soldiers, and because of the Barack Obamas we are dying again, and the Barack Obama have to hear the voice of those kind of military hierarchical officials. Those citizens have to bear the burden, so even though we are in the recession age or so forth, Mr. Speaker. Those are this is a very high impact compared to our side of the house. Secondly, about the line which they are talking about, with what the government side has mentioned about it is fine for the military officials to raise a biased view, to show the biased view in the world because we have the counter discourse. Mr. Speaker, we say no, because those especially the military organizations, those organizations completely close a community because those hierarchy officials have strong authority in the communities. If those hierarchy officials like generals or Afghanistan wars criticize Barack Obama, those ideas spread in those communities because everybody shares those kind of ideas. And I see like the Fox News media that those low-ranking officials say that we agree with the notion of the officials say like Barack Obama's negligence, we are dying in the battlefields. Those kind of complaints spread leads to the sabotage on those kind of or the decrease the motives for the military officials to work strongly, especially on the battlefield. Those kinds of motivations is necessary as far as they are in the very strong under the pressure to be died, to be killed, or those that lowering the motivation is completely severe situation. Therefore, every time those the administration fire the generals who criticize their administration to allocate the more soldiers or to let them to do to launch like atomic bomb and so forth. Thirdly, about those as far as those they are asked by the citizens to keep the national security, they have the duty to fulfill those kinds of laws, and they should fulfill the laws as far as they are asked to and hired by the citizens. For those reasons, we beg to oppose.
Thank the officer of reply speaker, and I'll call upon government reply speaker to end the government case in this debate.
speaker. But the government side has clearly told you that the unique reason why military officers have a right and it is justified to criticize. And also we clearly told you that why under the current situation the the policy is not necessary and the criticizing is so important for the public discourse making, and why this is not swaying the people, but rather that it is so important discourse for the public. So the crucial failure of the state opposition side is that first of all, they ask for the justification. They say like that there is like same also the policeman or the firefighters. They cannot. This is the same case to military because they say like this is a threat to life or that kind of thing. And also they say like that good consent is actually happening. So this is no problem. First of all, as they say like the policeman firefighter, we think that considering that the policy made to the policeman or firefighter, we can never see that these kind of policies is actually somewhat controversial or something that can one policy can be so threatened to life. This kind of thing is really unrealistic. However, consider the policies made to the made us for the military officers. This one small policy can actually kill the many soldiers. Or this is so controversial considering the fact that many parties are actually doing conflict over the military affairs. So we think that it is totally different case. And also we think that the consent is so important, and they say like that they made a consent so they can. But we never see that these kind of people are considering that fact that they automatically follow every decision made by the government. When there is a case like this kind of decision can actually lead to the killing many people, they also have a right to criticize because threatening to life is so devastating. Okay, so also what they say like that after taking this proposal, they say like that they're putting to the point of like the publicly criticizing. They say like they should secretly criticize or that kind of thing. However, if they privately say to the government and the government actually accept and they made a policy that is considering considering the demand of the military, they won't criticize in the first place. There's no necessity for them to actually criticize, right? Because under the current situation, they're punished so they cannot criticize, and also the public never noticed the fact that these kind of problems actually existing. That is why they have a strong necessity to criticize, right? However, so after taking this proposal, so we think that if the private is enough, they don't feel the necessity in the first place. However, they have a strong desire to criticize because the government have no incentive, because they try to put more focus on the budget or the conflict between the party or the civilians' affairs. So we think that this kind of public criticizing is so important in terms of the listening to the voice of the military officers. So and also they say like what they feel is like that the mindset is like the military officers try to achieve the visible achievement, but my partner has already told you like that there are other ministries are also trying to achieve visible achievement, right? That each ministry try to get each ministry try to get more budget for their own ministry and try to get more visible achievement uniquely to their ministry. So we think that. But this is same, and even though they do the visible achievement, they pursue the visible achievement cannot automatically result to the achievement, and also there is no unique to the military. And also they say like that there is a malfunction of the government. However, we clearly told you that for the POI like that, there is also the criticism like that. Requiring the increase the troop or the increase the soldier or increase the budget, how can we say that this kind of thing can actually lead to the decrease the motivation of the government, right? So considering the spectrum of the criticizing, their motivation will never decrease. So we think that we told you the unique reason to criticize. We see this is we can take this motion. Thank you.